The note in Lily Miller's pocket felt heavier than the chandelier overhead, as if 4 little words could shatter the whole room. Lily Miller's heart pounded as she crouched behind the potted plant, a scrap of paper trembling in her hand. Just a few feet away, a man in a faded jacket sat alone at a wobbly table shoved into the restaurant's darkest corner, his kind, tired eyes fixed on nothing. She'd overheard the chef laughing, seen the smirk on the manager's face, and heard the sentence that turned her stomach. Heat up yesterday's steak. He won't know the difference. Her mom said they were ghosts here, silent, invisible cleaners who didn't dare make trouble. But Lily's great-grandfather had fought in a war, carried men through gunfire because it was the right thing to do. Now, with 4 words scrawled in her neat handwriting, she was about to start her own battle. Just before we dive in, if you like this kind of stories of overcoming adversity and justice, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories reach. And make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss tomorrow's special video. Now let's jump back in. Enjoy the story. An old soldier's promise echoed in the heart of an 11-year-old girl. She watched a man who looked like her grandfather get treated like dirt. What she did next would change everything. The Gilded Sparrow was not a place for ghosts. It was a temple built for the living, for the loud, for the rich. Money was the scent in the air, a blend of expensive perfume, seared steak, and old leather. Every surface gleamed under the soft light of chandeliers that dripped crystal tears. Waiters moved like dancers, their steps silent and sure on the plush crimson carpet. They carried silver trays that held tiny, perfect mountains of food, creations that cost more than some people's weekly pay. Tonight, the restaurant was full. The low hum of conversation was a symphony of quiet deals and polite laughter. Men in suits that cost as much as a small car spoke in hushed tones. Women with diamonds at their throats and ice in their eyes picked at their salads, their smiles as carefully arranged as the flowers on their tables. It was a world of performance, where everyone played their part. Tucked away in a small, rarely used storage closet, a different world existed. This one smelled of bleach and damp towels. Here, 11-year-old Lily sat on an overturned bucket, her knees drawn up to her chin. A single dim bulb hummed above her head. She was sketching in a worn notebook, the pencil moving quickly in her small hand. She was drawing a sparrow with a crown on its head, just like the logo on the restaurant's fancy menus. Her mother, Sarah, was a ghost here. She moved through the grand rooms, but she was invisible. Sarah was a cleaner. Her job was to erase any sign of imperfection. She wiped away wine spills, polished away fingerprints, and made sure the gleaming bathrooms stayed spotless. She was quiet, efficient, and good at her job because she knew the most important rule: be unseen. Normally, Lily would be at home with a babysitter, but Mrs. Gable had canceled at the last minute, her own child sick with a fever. Sarah's boss, Mr. Davenport, had been furious when she called. Find a replacement, he had snapped. There was no replacement to be found. Then bring her, he'd said, his voice dripping with annoyance. But she stays out of sight, Sarah. If I see her, or if a single customer complains, you're finished. Do you understand? Sarah understood perfectly. So Lily was hidden in the closet, with a bag of pretzels and her drawing pad. She didn't mind. She was a quiet girl, used to making her own world on paper. She could hear the muffled sounds of the restaurant through the thin door. It was like listening to a faraway party she wasn't invited to. But then, the closet door creaked open. Stay here, sweetie, Sarah whispered, her face etched with worry. I just need to polish the front doors. I won't be long. Lily nodded, not looking up from her drawing. The moment her mother left, a wave of curiosity washed over her. It was one thing to hear the party, but another to see it. She peeked through the crack in the door. The restaurant stretched out before her, a sea of white tablecloths and glittering lights. It was more beautiful and more frightening than she had imagined. That's when she saw him. A man pushed through the heavy glass doors her mother was meant to be polishing. He was older, perhaps the age of her grandfather. His hair was silver and a little messy. He wore a simple, faded jacket, the kind a man might wear to work in his garden. His face was kind, but etched with a deep weariness. His eyes, she noticed, were sad. They swept over the room, not with greed or envy, but with a quiet, searching look. He didn't seem to see the chandeliers or the diamonds. He seemed to be looking for something else, something that wasn't there. A woman with a tight, unfriendly smile and hair pulled back so severely it seemed to hurt, stood at a tall wooden podium. Her name was Isabel. She looked the man up and down. Her smile vanished. It was as if a curtain had dropped. "Can I help you?" she asked. Her voice was cold, sharp, and loud enough for Lily to hear clearly. It was the voice of a locked door. "A table for one, please," the man said. His voice was quiet, but deep and steady. Isabel let out a small, sharp laugh that wasn't funny at all. "Do you have a reservation?" "No, I don't," the man replied patiently. "Sir," Isabel said, drawing the word out as if it tasted bad. "This is the Gilded Sparrow. We are fully booked. For months." She gestured vaguely toward the door. "There are other places nearby that might be more suitable." The man didn't move. He just stood there, his gaze calm. "I would like to eat here," he said simply. Lily watched, her small hands clutching her notebook. She saw the way Isabel's eyes narrowed. She saw the way a nearby table of laughing people fell silent, turning to stare at the man in the faded jacket. They whispered behind their hands, their faces masks of disapproval. Lily felt a hot knot of anger tighten in her stomach. It wasn't fair. The man hadn't done anything wrong. He was just quiet. He was just old. He just looked normal, like someone she knew. The manager, Mr. Davenport, glided over. He was a tall, thin man who always looked like he was smelling something unpleasant. He leaned in and whispered something to Isabel. She whispered back. Mr. Davenport's eyes flicked over to the man, and his lip curled in a tiny, almost invisible sneer. "Very well," Mr. Davenport said, his voice smooth but cold. "We may have one table. Follow me." He didn't lead the man to one of the nice tables by the window. He didn't lead him to a cozy booth. He led him on a long walk, past all the important people, all the way to the very back of the restaurant. Lily watched, her heart sinking. He was being led to a tiny, wobbly table crammed into a dark corner. It was right next to the swinging doors of the kitchen and beside the hallway to the bathrooms. It was a table of shame. It was the table they gave to people they wanted to forget. The man sat down without a word of complaint. He placed his hands on the table and waited. Lily saw a waiter, a young man named Connor, walk by the table 3 times, pointedly ignoring the old man. Mr. Davenport stood near the bar, watching, a small, satisfied smile on his face. Lily felt tears sting her eyes. It was cruel. It was the kind of casual cruelty she'd read about in books, but had never seen up close. The man at the table reminded her of the pictures of her great-grandfather, Sergeant Thomas Miller. He had the same quiet strength in his shoulders, the same look in his eyes that said he had seen too much of the world. Her great-grandfather had been a hero, a famous soldier from a long-ago war. Her mother kept his medals in a special box. He had been brave and kind, her mother always said. He believed in doing the right thing, no matter how small. And right now, this felt very, very wrong. Lily slipped out of the closet, her small feet making no sound on the thick carpet. She crept along the wall, hiding behind a large potted plant. She needed to be closer. She needed to see. From her hiding spot, Lily could see and hear everything. The kitchen doors swung open and shut, open and shut. Each time, a blast of noise and hot, greasy air flooded the small corner where the man sat. Shouts from the chef, the clang of pots and pans, the hiss of the grill. It was a constant assault. People walking to the restroom would brush past his chair without a word of apology, sometimes knocking his table so that the water in his glass shivered. And still, he waited. He sat with a stillness that was almost profound. He didn't look at his phone. He didn't tap his fingers. He simply observed the restaurant, his expression unreadable. Patience was a cloak he wore comfortably. Lily saw her mother, Sarah, come out of the main hallway. Sarah's face was pale. She was carrying her bucket of cleaning supplies. Her eyes met Lily's for a fleeting second, and a look of pure panic crossed her features. She gave a tiny, sharp shake of her head, a clear command. "Get back in the closet." Now, Lily knew she should obey, but she couldn't. Her feet felt rooted to the floor. She was transfixed by the quiet drama unfolding at the forgotten table. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a young waitress named Chloe was forced to take the man's order. Mr. Davenport had said something to her, his voice low and threatening. Chloe approached the table reluctantly, her notepad in her hand. "Are you ready to order?" she asked, her voice flat. She didn't make eye contact. She didn't tell him her name. She didn't mention the specials. The man looked up at her, and his tired eyes seemed to see right through her nervousness. "Yes," he said. "I'll have the ribeye steak. Medium rare, with the roasted potatoes." Lily knew from the gossip she'd overheard from the waiters that the ribeye was the most expensive thing on the menu. It was the signature dish of the famous chef Antoine, the culinary tyrant who ruled the kitchen. Chloe scribbled down the order and practically ran from the table, taking the slip of paper into the chaotic kitchen. Lily's hiding spot was close enough that she could hear the rumble of voices from behind the swinging doors. She crept a little closer, her heart thumping against her ribs like a trapped bird. The doors swung open for a moment as a busboy rushed out, and she heard a loud, booming voice, thick with a French accent. "What is this?" It was Chef Antoine. He was a large man with a furious red face and a pristine white chef's hat that sat on his head like a crown. He held the small order ticket in his thick fingers as if it were a piece of garbage. "The man in the corner," Chloe's timid voice replied. "Table 32. Chef Antoine laughed, a harsh, barking sound that had no humor in it. He strode to the small porthole window in the door and peered out. His eyes landed on the old man in the faded jacket. A nasty smile spread across the chef's face. "This one? In the rags? He orders my ribeye?" He turned to his sous chef, a man who always laughed at his jokes. "He thinks he can just walk in here and order the best thing on the menu? He will not appreciate it. He will not know the difference." The chef ripped the order ticket from the clip. "Listen to me," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, but still loud enough for Lily to hear. "We have the steak from yesterday's service. It was sent back. The customer said it was overcooked. It is still fine. We will heat it up, cover it in sauce. Give him that one. He is nobody. He will eat his trash and be grateful." The sous chef snickered. Another cook looked down at his cutting board, his face uncomfortable, but he said nothing. Nobody ever said anything to Chef Antoine. Lily's blood went cold. They were going to serve him leftovers. Old food that someone else had sent back. They were going to do it just because they didn't like the way he looked. It was a secret, ugly thing, a poison they were adding to his meal that he would never even know about. She looked over at the man at table 32. He was still waiting, a picture of quiet dignity. He had no idea he was being mocked. He had no idea he was about to be cheated. The injustice of it was a physical pain in Lily's chest. It was more than unfair, it was dishonorable. It was a lie. Her great-grandfather had fought in a war against lies. He had fought for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Her mother appeared at her side, grabbing her arm in a surprisingly strong grip. "Lily, what are you doing?" Sarah hissed, her eyes wide with fear. "I told you to stay put. If Davenport sees you." "Mama, did you hear them?" Lily whispered, her voice trembling with outrage. "The chef. He's going to give that man old food. It's not right." "Hush," Sarah said, pulling her back towards the dark closet. "It's not our business, Lily. We are ghosts here, remember? We see nothing. We hear nothing. But it's wrong." Lily insisted, trying to pull her arm free. "We have to do something. Do something." Sarah's voice was a frantic whisper. "If I do something, I will lose my job. How will we pay the rent, Lily? How will I buy your school supplies? This is not our fight. The world is not always fair. You have to learn that." They were back at the closet door. Sarah pushed her gently inside. "Please, Lily. For me. Just stay here. Don't make a sound." Sarah's face was a mask of desperation. Lily could see the fear in her eyes, and she loved her mother more than anything. She didn't want to cause her trouble. She nodded slowly. Sarah gave her a relieved look, closed the door, and was gone. But Lily couldn't sit back down. Her mother's words echoed in her ears. The world is not always fair. Maybe not. But that didn't mean you had to help it be unfair. It didn't mean you had to stand by and watch someone be cruel. Her great-grandfather wouldn't have stood by. Her heart was hammering. An idea, wild and terrifying, began to form in her mind. It was a stupid idea, a dangerous idea. She could get her mother fired. But the image of the old man's patient face and the sound of the chef's mocking laughter wouldn't leave her. She looked down at her notebook. Her pencil was still in her hand. Her hands were shaking, but her mind was clear. She knew what she had to do. She tore a small, clean sheet of paper from the back of her notebook. She knelt on the floor, using an upturned bucket as a makeshift desk. The single bulb above her cast a small pool of light on the paper. She uncapped a pen from her school bag. Her handwriting was neat, the careful cursive of a student who tried hard in class. She thought for a moment, then wrote 4 simple words. "That's yesterday's leftovers." She stared at the note. It looked so small, so powerless. But it was the truth. And the truth, her great-grandfather used to say in his letters, was the heaviest thing in the world. Now came the hard part. How to get it to him. She waited, her ear pressed to the door. Minutes stretched into an eternity. She heard the clatter of plates. She heard the "order up" call from the kitchen. It was his meal. It was happening now. She cracked the door open again. Chloe, the young waitress, was approaching the pass, the window where the chefs put the finished dishes. Chef Antoine placed the plate under the heat lamp with a flourish. The steak was covered in a thick, dark sauce. The potatoes were arranged perfectly. It looked beautiful. It was a beautiful lie. Lily watched as Chloe picked up the plate. Her hands were trembling slightly. She knew. She knew she was serving a lie, and she hated it. But she was too scared to say anything. Lily knew that feeling. She saw it in her mother's eyes all the time. Chloe began the long walk to table 32. It was now or never. Lily took a deep breath. She folded the small note into a tiny square. She clutched it in her sweaty palm. She slipped out of the closet. The restaurant was a blur of noise and movement. She kept her head down, her small form easily hidden by the bustling waiters and tall chairs. She moved like her mother did. She tried to become a ghost. Her target was the man's jacket, which was draped over the back of his chair. Chloe was getting closer. "Your ribeye, sir," she mumbled, setting the plate down. Lily was just a few feet away now, her heart pounding in her ears. She pretended to have dropped something. She bent down, her blonde hair falling over her face, hiding her from view. Her hand shot out, quick as a little snake. She tucked the tiny, folded piece of paper into the pocket of the man's faded jacket. It was done. She scurried away, back to the safety of her closet, her mission complete. Her whole body was shaking. She shut the door, plunging herself back into the dim, dusty silence. She had done it. She had done a brave, terrifying, stupid thing. She climbed back onto her bucket and peered through the crack in the door. She held her breath, waiting. The man thanked the waitress. He picked up his fork and knife. He looked down at the beautiful plate of food. He was about to cut into the steak. "Find the note," Lily prayed, her hands clenched into tight fists. "Please, find the note." The man paused. He seemed to feel a slight chill. He reached for his jacket, perhaps to pull it more snugly around his shoulders. His hand brushed against his pocket. He felt something there, something that wasn't there before. His brow furrowed in confusion. He reached into the pocket. He pulled out the tiny, folded square of paper. Lily watched as he carefully unfolded it. He held it in his large, weathered hands. His eyes scanned the 4 simple words. Lily saw the exact moment he read them. He did not gasp. He did not get angry. He did not call for the manager. He simply froze. His fork and knife, which had been hovering over the steak, lowered slowly to the table. His shoulders, which had been slumped with weariness, seemed to straighten. A change came over his face. The sadness in his eyes was replaced by something else. Something hard and sharp, like polished steel. He looked around the room, his gaze slow, methodical, and assessing. It was not the gaze of a victim. It was the gaze of a general surveying a battlefield. He carefully refolded the note. He did not put it in his pocket. He placed it on the table, right beside his plate, for the whole world to see. Then, he pushed the plate of food away from him. He hadn't taken a single bite. He sat there for another minute, perfectly still. Then he reached into his wallet and pulled out several large bills. He laid them neatly on the table, far more than enough to cover the meal he hadn't eaten. Then he stood up. He was taller than Lily had thought. He put on his jacket, his movements deliberate. He gave one last, long look around the dining room. His eyes seemed to linger for a fraction of a second on the potted plant where Lily had hidden, and then on the closet door. But it must have been her imagination. He walked out of the restaurant, his back straight, his steps silent and sure. The heavy glass doors swung shut behind him, leaving a profound silence in his wake. The silence left by the old man was louder than the clatter of the kitchen. It was a vacuum that sucked all the air out of the room. Chloe, the young waitress, stared at the untouched plate, the pile of cash, and the small, folded note. For a moment, she was paralyzed. A customer leaving that much money for a meal they didn't eat was strange. A customer leaving a note was stranger still. Her training told her to clear the table, take the money to the cashier, and reset the place for the next guest. But her instincts screamed that the note was dangerous. With a trembling hand, she picked it up. She didn't read it. She didn't want to know. She scooped up the cash and carried the plate, the note still clutched in her fist, back toward the kitchen. She bypassed the dish pit and went straight to the manager's podium. Mr. Davenport was adjusting his tie in a small mirror, a preening, self-satisfied gesture. "He's gone," Chloe whispered, her voice barely audible. "Good," Davenport said without turning around. "The less riffraff, the better. Did he pay?" "Yes, sir. But he didn't eat. And he left this." She held out her hand, offering him the note as if it were a live scorpion. Davenport took it, annoyed at the interruption. He unfolded it. His smug expression dissolved. The blood drained from his face, leaving behind a pasty, gray mask of fury. He read the 4 words twice, his lips moving silently. "Who did this?" he hissed, his voice a low, venomous thing. "Who did this?" "I don't know, sir," Chloe stammered, taking a step back. "It was just there, on the table." Davenport's eyes scanned the dining room, a frantic, paranoid search. Who had been near table 32? Who had talked to the man? No one. He'd made sure of that. His gaze fell on his staff, lingering on each one, accusingly. This was an inside job. A betrayal. He stormed into the kitchen, the note crumpled in his fist. Chef Antoine was leaning against a counter, sipping an espresso. "What has your face in a knot?" the chef asked, amused. Davenport slammed the note down on the stainless steel counter. "This." Chef Antoine smoothed out the paper. He read it. A slow, unpleasant smile spread across his face. "So, the old beggar had a friend. Someone is playing a joke." "This is not a joke, Antoine," Davenport snapped. "He left $200 on the table. For a meal he didn't touch. Does that sound like a beggar to you?" Someone on our staff warned him. "Nonsense," the chef scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "It is nothing. Forget about it. He was a nobody." But even as he said it, a flicker of uncertainty crossed his eyes. The money was unusual. The rest of the night was thick with tension. Davenport prowled the dining room, his eyes like a hawk's, watching everyone. The staff whispered in corners, the story of the strange old man, the untouched steak, and the mysterious notes spreading through the restaurant like a virus. In the small, dark closet, Sarah found Lily asleep, her head resting on a pile of clean towels, the sketchbook open on her lap. Sarah's heart ached with a mixture of love and fear. She gently shook her daughter awake. "Come on, sweetie. It's time to go." As they walked through the back hallways to the employee exit, they could hear the staff gossiping. "Just left it there, didn't even take a bite." Sarah's grip on Lily's hand tightened. She had a dreadful, sinking feeling in the pit of her stomach. She knew her daughter. She knew her daughter's fierce, unwavering sense of right and wrong, a sense inherited directly from a soldier who had died long before she was born. Once they were in their small, old car, driving through the quiet city streets, Sarah finally asked the question she was terrified to ask. "Lily," she began, her voice strained. "The man in the corner tonight. Did you see what happened?" Lily stared out the window at the passing streetlights. "He didn't eat his food," she said, her voice small. "I heard there was a note," Sarah pressed, her heart hammering against her ribs. Lily was silent for a long moment. Then, she turned to face her mother, her blue eyes clear and steady in the dim light of the car. "It was wrong what they were going to do," she said. The confession hung in the air between them. Sarah had to grip the steering wheel to keep her hands from shaking. All the fears of the day, of the week, of her entire life, seemed to coalesce into a single point of terror. "Lily, what have you done?" she whispered, a mix of awe and horror in her voice. "You could have gotten me fired. Do you have any idea what that means for us?" "It was mean," Lily said, her lower lip trembling just slightly. "He looked like Grandpa Thomas. It was a lie, and Grandpa Thomas said you never let a lie stand if you have the power to stop it." Sarah pulled the car over to the curb, the engine idling roughly. She looked at her daughter, this small, 11-year-old child who held onto the words of a dead hero like a shield. She was reckless. She was naive. And she was absolutely, breathtakingly brave. A wave of pride, so fierce it almost choked her, washed over Sarah, momentarily eclipsing her fear. But the fear was still there, a cold, hard stone in her stomach. "You can never, ever do something like that again," Sarah said, her voice stern but shaky. "Promise me, Lily." This is a grown-up world with grown-up rules, and it's dangerous. You have to promise me." "I promise," Lily whispered. But in her heart, she wasn't so sure. She had stopped to lie, and for the first time in her life, she had felt the quiet, powerful hum of doing the right thing. It was a feeling she knew she would chase forever. The next morning, Mr. Davenport arrived at the restaurant before anyone else. He was a man obsessed. He went directly to his office and began reviewing the security footage from the previous night. The cameras were old, the quality grainy. They were angled mostly at the entrances and the cash registers. Table 32 was in a blind spot, a shadowy corner of the room. He watched for hours, fast-forwarding, rewinding, his eyes straining at the screen. He saw the old man arrive. He saw himself leading him to the table. He saw Chloe serve him. He saw the man leave. Nothing. Then, he widened his search. He watched the footage of the main floor, looking for anything out of the ordinary. And then he saw it. A brief, blurry image. A small figure with blonde hair, darting from behind a potted plant just moments before the food was served. It was a ghost, a flicker on the screen, but he knew. It was the cleaner's daughter. He couldn't prove it. The footage wasn't clear enough to be certain. But in his gut, he knew. Sarah had brought her child, and that child had cost him. Humiliated him. He couldn't fire Sarah without solid proof. The union was weak, but it existed. But he could break her. He could make her regret the day she ever brought her little spy into his restaurant. When Sarah arrived for her shift that afternoon, Mr. Davenport was waiting for her. "Change of duties, Sarah," he said, his voice dripping with false pleasantness. "We're taking you off the front-of-house rotation. The basement needs a deep cleaning. All of it." Sarah's heart sank. The basement was a labyrinth of damp, cold rooms. It was where the silver was stored, thousands of pieces that had to be polished by hand. It was where the ancient, grease-clogged ventilation filters were brought to be scrubbed. It was a place of exile. And after that, Davenport continued, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "The grease traps behind the kitchen need to be emptied. Chef Antoine has been complaining about the smell." It was the worst, most disgusting job in the entire restaurant. It was a punishment, plain and simple. Sarah knew why she was being given this work. He knew, or at least he suspected. She nodded meekly, her face a neutral mask, and went to get her supplies. "Yes, Mr. Davenport." For the next 3 days, Sarah lived in a world of misery. Her hands were raw and bleeding from the harsh silver polish. Her back ached from hunching over filthy filters. The stench of the grease traps clung to her clothes and her hair, a smell she couldn't seem to wash away. The other staff members avoided her. They knew what was happening. She had been marked by the manager, and no one wanted to be caught in the crossfire. Lily knew it was her fault. Every evening, when her mother came home, exhausted and smelling of chemicals and old grease, a fresh wave of guilt washed over her. She would try to help by rubbing her mother's sore shoulders, her small hands working hard to undo the damage she had caused. "I'm sorry, Mama," she whispered one night as Sarah winced in pain. "It's not your fault, sweetie," Sarah lied, her voice tired. "It's just a job." But they both knew the truth. This wasn't just a job, it was a penance. And Lily was the reason for the sin. On the 4th day, a Thursday, the afternoon was gray and drizzling. The mood inside the Gilded Sparrow was as gloomy as the weather. Then, at precisely 2 o'clock, a long, black car, so sleek and polished it seemed to drink the light, pulled up to the curb. A driver in a crisp, black uniform hurried to open the rear door. Out stepped the man from table 32. But it was as if he had been entirely remade. The faded jacket was gone, replaced by a dark, charcoal gray suit that fit him perfectly. His silver hair was neatly combed. He wore a watch on his wrist that gleamed with the quiet confidence of old money. The weariness was gone from his face, replaced by an expression of cold, hard purpose. He was no longer a ghost. He was a king. Isabel, the hostess, was at her podium. She saw the expensive car, the suit, the air of authority. She put on her best, most welcoming smile. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Gilded Sparrow. Do you have a reservation?" The man's eyes, now sharp and piercing, met hers. He didn't smile. "My name is Arthur Sterling," he said, his voice low and resonant, a voice used to being obeyed. Isabel's professional smile faltered. The name sounded vaguely familiar, important. "Of course, Mr. Sterling," she stammered. "Right this way. We have a lovely table by the window for you." "No," Sterling said, his voice stopping her cold. You misunderstand. I don't want a lovely table by the window. He scanned the room, then pointed with a single, commanding finger to the dark, forgotten corner. I will be sitting there. At table 32. And I believe the waitress's name was Chloe. Send her to me. Isabel's jaw dropped. The blood drained from her face. She recognized him now. It was the man in the rags. Her mind scrambled, trying to process the impossible transformation. She turned and fled to find Mr. Davenport. Lily was in the closet. Sarah had been forced to bring her again, as her punishment duties meant she had to work a double shift. Lily peeked through the crack in the door and saw everything. She saw the beautiful car. She saw the man, no longer looking like her grandfather, but like one of the powerful men she saw on the news. And she saw him point to his old table. A thrill, sharp and electric, ran through her. He had come back. The story wasn't over. Mr. Davenport hurried out from his office, his face a mess of confusion and panic. He saw Arthur Sterling standing there, radiating an aura of immense power, and he nearly stumbled. Mr. Sterling, what an unexpected honor. Davenport gushed, his voice suddenly high and reedy. There must be a mistake. Table 32 is unacceptable. Please, allow me to seat you at our best table, the investor's table. Sterling gave him a look so cold it could have frozen fire. The investor's table? He repeated, a dangerous silkiness in his voice. An interesting choice of words. No, I will sit at table 32. Or I will leave, and I will buy this building, and I will turn it into a parking garage. The choice is yours, Mr. Davenport. The threat, delivered so calmly, was utterly terrifying in its sincerity. Without another word, a pale and sweating Mr. Davenport led Arthur Sterling back to the wobbly, shameful table by the kitchen doors. The entire restaurant watched in stunned silence. The performance had stopped. A new play had begun, and no one knew their lines. Sterling sat down, placing his hands on the table, just as he had before. But this time, he was not a patient victim. He was a judge, and the court was now in session. He ordered the ribeye steak. Then he asked for the wine list. He scanned it for a moment, then pointed. The 1982 Chateau Lafite Rothschild, he said, his voice clear and carrying. A gasp went through the nearby tables. It was the most expensive wine on the list, a legendary bottle that cost thousands of dollars. The order went to the kitchen. Chef Antoine, who had been informed of the guest's identity, was now drenched in sweat. His arrogance was at war with his survival instinct. He could not serve leftovers. He had to make the best steak of his life. But the wine, it was an insult that this man, this wolf in sheep's clothing, would know to order such a bottle. He decided on one last, desperate act of fraudulent superiority. He will not know, he muttered to his sous chef as he unlocked the private cellar. Get me the 2005 Pauillac. The label is similar if you do not look closely. The taste, it is for experts only. This man is just showing off. We will chill it well. He will be none the wiser. Down in the basement, polishing an endless pile of forks, Sarah heard the panicked footsteps of Chloe on the stairs. She heard the exchange with the chef, the command to bring the wrong bottle. Her heart stopped. It was happening again. A new lie? She thought of Lily. She thought of her job. The fear was a cold hand gripping her throat. She stayed silent. She did nothing. The shame was immediate and corrosive. Chloe brought the wine to the table. The service was a masterclass in nervous tension. Davenport hovered nearby, wringing his hands. Sterling watched as the bottle was presented, as the cork was pulled, as the dark red liquid was poured. He picked up the glass. He didn't taste it. He simply examined the bottle, which Chloe had left on the table. He turned it slowly in his hands. Then he looked up, his gaze finding Mr. Davenport's. An interesting bottle, he said, his voice dangerously calm. This is a fine Bordeaux. An excellent wine. Davenport almost collapsed with relief. Only the best for you, Mr. Sterling. But it is not, Sterling continued, his voice dropping an octave. What I ordered. He tapped a perfectly manicured finger on the label. This is a 2005 Pauillac. A fine vintage. But the Lafite I ordered was from 1982. A legendary vintage. One has a market value of around $300. The other, the one you intend to bill me $4,000 for, is a piece of history. Did you think I would not know the difference? The silence that followed was deafening. Every diner in the vicinity had stopped eating, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. Chloe looked as though she might faint. Mr. Davenport's face cycled through a series of colors, from white to red to a sickly shade of green. "Chef Antoine," Sterling called out, his voice now ringing with authority, no longer asking, but commanding. "Would you please join us?" A moment later, the kitchen doors swung open, and the chef emerged, his face ashen, his white hat no longer a crown, but a fool's cap. He was trapped. The lie had been stopped, and the man who stopped it was looking at him with eyes that promised a reckoning. Chef Antoine stood before the table, his face a mottled canvas of red and white. The entire dining room, a stage of hushed whispers and sidelong glances, had become his jury. He looked from Arthur Sterling's stony face to Mr. Davenport's pathetic, crumbling expression, and he knew he was defeated. The arrogance that had been his armor for decades was gone, stripped away in a matter of minutes, leaving only the soft, frightened man underneath. There must be some mistake in the cellar," the chef stammered, the lie flimsy and pathetic even to his own ears. He tried to muster some of his old bluster. "These things can happen. My apologies, Mr. Sterling. The lighting is poor down there. I will fetch the correct bottle myself. A complimentary glass of champagne for the table while you wait." "You will do no such thing," Sterling said, his voice cutting through the chef's excuse like a scalpel. "You will stand here. Your performance is not yet over. We are not finished." Sterling's gaze swept over the chef, then landed with heavy finality back on the manager. "This restaurant, Mr. Davenport, seems to have a systemic problem with honesty. A problem that goes far beyond your wine list." He reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. A woman at a nearby table froze, her fork hovering over a plate of untouched risotto. Sterling produced a small, folded piece of paper. It was Lily's note. He carefully unfolded it and placed it on the table next to the fraudulent bottle of wine, a second piece of evidence in his quiet prosecution. "On my first visit here, just a few nights ago," Sterling announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the now silent room, "I was dressed more modestly. I was, in your hostess's eyes, unsuitable. I was met with contempt at the door. I was hidden away at this wretched table, a piece of undesirable furniture to be tucked out of sight. I was ignored by your staff. And then, I made the mistake of ordering the best thing on your menu. I ordered the ribeye steak." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle, his eyes locking with Chef Antoine's. "Your chef, in his infinite artistic wisdom, decided I was not worthy of a fresh meal. He decided to serve me garbage." A collective gasp rippled through the diners. At a table of investors, a man's wine glass slipped from his nerveless fingers, spilling red across the pristine white cloth like a spreading wound. This was more than poor service. This was a mortal sin in the world of fine dining. It was a scandal that could shatter a restaurant's reputation overnight. "That is an outrageous, slanderous accusation." Davenport blustered, finding a last, desperate reserve of indignation. His voice was a high-pitched squeak. "We are a five-star establishment. We would never—" "Wouldn't you?" Sterling interrupted, his voice dangerously soft. He picked up the note. "Then perhaps you can explain this document. It seems my experience was not unique." He held it up and read the 4 simple words aloud, his voice echoing in the stillness like a judge's sentence. "That's yesterday's leftovers." If the accusation had been a gunshot, the note was the smoking gun. The truth of it was undeniable, written in the clear, honest cursive of a child. Davenport's face, already pale, turned the color of ash. He looked wildly around the room, a cornered animal searching for an escape. There was none. Every face was turned toward him, a sea of accusation. "Who wrote this note?" Sterling asked, his eyes scanning the faces of the terrified staff who had gathered at the edge of the room. "Who, in this entire establishment, has a conscience? Who has integrity?" No one moved. No one spoke. The waiters stared at their shoes. The busboys looked at the ceiling. Their silence was an admission of collective guilt, of a culture of fear where speaking up was a fireable offense. Davenport, in his panic, saw one last, cruel opportunity to save himself. He would offer a sacrifice to the angry god before him. "It was the cleaner," he spat, his voice shaking with a pathetic mix of fear and rage. He pointed a trembling finger toward the basement stairs, his whole body shaking. "Sarah Miller. She's been nothing but trouble. A problem employee. I had to discipline her just this week for insubordination. She has a grudge. She brings her child here against all policy, a clear violation. I'm sure she is the one who wrote that lie to cause trouble. He turned to a busboy, his eyes wild. Go, get her. Bring her up here. Down in the cold, damp basement, Sarah was on her hands and knees, scrubbing at a stubborn stain on the concrete floor. She had heard the commotion from upstairs, the raised voices, the profound silences. She knew, with a mother's certainty, that it was connected to Lily's note. She had been praying for it to all go away, for the man to never return. But he had. And now, the world was cracking open. The busboy clattered down the stairs. Sarah, Davenport wants you. Upstairs. Now. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Sarah's heart. This was it. This was the moment she would lose her job, her home, her ability to care for her daughter. Her legs felt weak as she rose, wiping her dirty, chapped hands on her apron. The journey up the stairs was the longest of her life, each step a leaden weight. She emerged from the dim staircase into the brilliant light of the dining room. It was like stepping onto a stage in the middle of a play she hadn't rehearsed. Every eye in the room, dozens of them, critical and curious, was on her. She saw Mr. Davenport's accusing face, Chef Antoine's defeated slump, and the cold, powerful man at table 32, holding the note that had sealed all their fates. Mrs. Miller, Arthur Sterling said. His voice was not unkind, but it was searching, serious. He held up the note. Did you write this? Sarah looked at the note. She saw Lily's perfect, careful handwriting. She looked at Mr. Davenport, who was nodding his head furiously, his eyes silently screaming at her to be his scapegoat. Her mind raced. If she said yes, she confessed to interfering, to being where she shouldn't have been. She would be fired. If she said no, she would be lying, invalidating her daughter's brave act, and they would probably fire her anyway. Her throat was dry. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She was trapped between her daughter's integrity and her own survival. I did. The voice was small, but clear and pure as a bell. It cut through the thick tension in the room like a beam of light. The door to the storage closet was open, and standing there, with her chin held high and her small shoulders squared, was Lily. She took a step forward, then another, walking out into the center of the room. I wrote the note, she said again, louder this time, her gaze fixed on Arthur Sterling. My mom didn't know. It was me. You were going to serve that man a lie, and my great-grandfather taught us that you always stop a lie if you have the power. The sight of the small, blonde girl standing there in her simple dress, confessing so bravely, stunned the entire restaurant into an even deeper silence. Mr. Davenport looked as if he had been struck by lightning. Arthur Sterling stared at Lily, and the cold mask of the Seom melted away. He saw not an accuser, but a child with an unshakable moral compass. He saw the integrity he valued above all else. He then looked at Sarah, who had rushed to her daughter's side, pulling her close as if to shield her from the world. Your name, Sterling said softly to Sarah, his voice different now, laced with a strange, new emotion. Davenport said it was Miller. Sarah Miller. Yes, Sarah whispered, her arm tightening around Lily. And her great-grandfather? Sterling asked, his eyes locked on Lily. Who was he? Sergeant Thomas Miller, Lily said proudly. He was a hero. Arthur Sterling's composure, the iron control he had maintained all afternoon, finally broke. He looked as if he had seen a ghost. His eyes misted over. He slowly, reverently, reached into his wallet. He bypassed the credit cards and the cash. He pulled out a very old, creased black and white photograph, its edges soft with time and handling. He laid it on the table. It was a picture of two young men in old-fashioned army uniforms, their faces smudged with dirt but bright with life. They stood in front of a bombed-out building, their arms slung around each other's shoulders in a gesture of deep camaraderie. One of the men was unmistakably a young Thomas Miller. My father, Sterling said, his voice thick with an emotion that had been buried for half a century. He tapped the other man in the photo. His name was Daniel Sterling. He was a private, a scared kid from Ohio, 1,000 miles from home. He looked from the photo up to Lily, his eyes shining with unshed tears. During a battle, a terrible one, my father was hit by shrapnel. His leg was shattered. He couldn't walk. His squad had to fall back. The order was to leave the wounded who couldn't move. They left him. They thought he was a lost cause. Sterling took a deep, shuddering breath. But Sergeant Thomas Miller, your great-grandfather, he disobeyed a direct order. He refused to leave him. He told his commanding officer that we don't leave our people behind. Not ever. Under constant, heavy fire, he went back. He threw my father over his shoulder and carried him nearly 2 miles through enemy territory to an aid station. He saved his life. The story fell into the silent room, a piece of sacred history from a forgotten war. I exist, Sterling said, his voice trembling, because of the courage of a man named Miller. My father spent the rest of his life looking for him, to thank him, but they never found each other after the war. Before he died, he made me promise. He said, "The Millers are people of honor, Arthur. It's in their blood. If you ever find them, you repay that debt. You honor that name." He looked down at the note in his hand, then at the brave little girl standing before him. "And here you are," he whispered, a look of profound wonder on his face. A Miller, with the same honor, the same courage, stopping a lie because it was the right thing to do. He smiled, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his face. The debt is now due. The emotional weight of the moment was immense. It was no longer about bad service. It was about heroism, honor, and a promise kept across generations. Sterling stood up. The judge had returned, but his verdict was now imbued with the force of personal history. He turned his gaze, now cold as a winter storm, upon Davenport and Chef Antoine. "You too," he said, his voice ringing with finality. "You have dishonored this establishment. You have dishonored your profession. And you have dishonored this city. You are both fired. Effective immediately. Security will escort you out. If you are not gone in 10 minutes, I will have you charged with fraud." He then addressed the stunned room. "For those who are unaware," he announced, "my company, Sterling Holdings, owns this building. And as of this moment, I am exercising a clause in the lease agreement regarding conduct detrimental to the property's reputation. The Gilded Sparrow's lease is terminated." Panic erupted from a corner table where the restaurant's other investors sat. "You can't do that," one of them shouted. "I can," Sterling said calmly. "And I have. However, out of respect for the jobs of the other people here, I will offer to buy the business from you. For half of what it was worth yesterday. I suggest you take it. After this story gets out, it will be worth nothing." Cornered and humiliated, they had no choice. Sterling then looked at the assembled staff. "A new chapter begins today," he said. "This restaurant will no longer be a temple for snobs and bullies. It will be a place of quality, respect, and honor. Anyone who does not believe in that mission can leave now." He pointed to a young sous chef who had looked ashamed during the chef's tirades. "You, what's your name?" "Miguel, sir," the young man said. "Miguel, you're the new head chef. Cook with honesty. Cook with pride." Then, Arthur Sterling turned to Sarah. She stood holding Lily, tears streaming down her face. "Mrs. Miller," he said gently, "a place of honor needs an honorable leader. I would like you to be the new general manager of this restaurant. The salary will be triple what you are making now, and it comes with full benefits and a pension." Sarah stared at him, speechless. The world had turned upside down. From the filth of the basement to the pinnacle of the dining room in a single afternoon. She could only nod, unable to speak through her tears. Finally, Sterling knelt, so he was eye to eye with Lily. "And you, Lily Miller," he said, his voice soft. "Your great-grandfather was a hero who saved soldiers. Today, you were a hero who saved the truth. He would be so proud of you." He gently took her hand. "I am going to make sure you have everything you need to become whatever you want to be. I am establishing a trust in your name. The Miller Honor Scholarship. Your entire education, from this day until you finish your last university degree, is taken care of. You will never have to worry about anything but your dreams." 6 months later, the heavy glass doors of the restaurant opened onto a transformed world. The sign outside no longer read "The Gilded Sparrow." It now read "The Sergeant's Table." Inside, the atmosphere was different. The stuffy silence was gone, replaced by the warm, happy buzz of conversation. The clientele was diverse. Families celebrating birthdays, young couples on dates, old friends sharing a bottle of wine. The crimson carpets had been replaced with warm hardwood, and the walls were adorned with elegant, simple photographs of local city history, including a large, framed picture of 2 young soldiers in the lobby. Sarah Miller moved through the room, not as a ghost, but as the master of ceremonies. She greeted guests with a genuine smile, her confidence radiating. She was no longer a cleaner hiding in the shadows. She was a leader, respected and admired by her staff, who now received fair wages and were treated with kindness. And at the best table, a cozy booth by the window, Lily sat doing her homework. Next to her, a sketchbook lay open, filled with drawings of heroes, both in and out of uniform. She was no longer a secret, hidden in a closet. She was the restaurant's heart, a beloved fixture. Arthur Sterling sat across from her, not in a suit, but in a simple, comfortable sweater. He was a regular here, but he was more than a patron. He was family. Did I ever tell you about the time your great-grandfather traded his entire week's rations for a bar of chocolate to share with my dad? Sterling asked, his eyes twinkling. Lily looked up from her math book, her own eyes bright with curiosity. No, she said, leaning forward. Tell me. As the story of a long-ago friendship unfolded, a new story was being written all around them. It was a story built on a simple foundation, that honor is more valuable than money, that courage is a legacy passed down through the heart, and that sometimes the most powerful thing in the world is a little girl, a piece of paper, and 4 simple words of truth. The debt had been paid. The honor had been restored. And at the sergeant's table, everyone, absolutely everyone, was served with dignity. Thank you for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Stay tuned for more immersive stories.